In this video, I want to talk about the Speedball printing press. It's just called the Speedball Press. It's a Model B. It's very simple. It's right there. This is a memory foam pad on the bottom. The overall printing size, or the printing area, is listed as 6 by 8, which is the size of the pressure plate. But you may find that smaller blocks print more easily, simply because of the way it works, and it's hard to get a full block on the 6 by 8. Now, I thought I was going to be limited to note cards laying this way and printing on 1/2 of a note card, but that's not really the case. Now, I'll show you, it's very simple to use, and I'll show you how it works in a moment. But I wanted to show you some examples of printing that I've just done with it. Different papers will give you different effects. This is lightly inked, a whale tail. On this paper is charcoal paper, so it has a texture to it. And you can see that texture in the actual print. And I'm showing you these on big paper because these are the examples I kept. This paper didn't fit in the press. Here's the same thing. So different papers are going to give you different results. I've been using in the press copy paper, regular old printer copy paper, to test out my blocks. So this one was done in the press. That's a Jeep. It gives a good overall print, much more clear. In this case with this Jeep, it's much more clear than when I was just using hand pressure. Here is a North Atlantic right whale. Now this block, it's here somewhere. I think it's about 6 inches wide. It might be 5.5, so it just fit in the press. But that's the printing I got from the press with that. What else did I do with the press? Here's a silhouette. Here's a dog, smiling or growling. And here's another whale tail. This one was done in the press on the smaller copy paper. And you can see that my inking was thinner where it's lighter and thicker where it's more solid. So those are the types of impressions you're going to get with this press. And to see it from the side here, let me move the ink. It doesn't come with any directions at all. It's very simple. I read some of the reviews on I believe Amazon. It might have been Dick Blick. One person who teaches high school block printing said that he likes to have his students put the block down facing up on the memory foam with the paper on top. Now, that gives you a slightly different effect than putting the paper down and the block on top, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But to work the press, you just pull that down. So I'll show you, this is a new block I just finished. Oh, I think I washed that one. The sewing machine block. I just did these two in the press. I think I just put the block in the sink though, to be washed. So even though I got even pressure, see how it fell out a little bit there? So inking is still the priority when you're doing this. And you might end up like me with little prints everywhere. So let's take one of these other blocks that I have right here of the whale or the girl or the dog, and let's just do a quick print. Again, this is copy paper, and it is, I cut it to about just under, I don't know, it might be 5 by 7. So let me ink, let's do some of the girl, because this was a little difficult to get the detail correct. And I'll show you the two different ways that you can do this. So one is to place the block. Now I already have tested that when this comes down, you can see about where the plate, the upper plate, is going to hit. And so I already have an idea that that's going to be right about here. So there is the block on the foam, and I'm going to put paper on top of the block. And you saw I inked it fairly easily. Now I would straighten the paper, except it's already hit the ink, so. And you just pull the handle down and go like that with as much pressure as you want. You can't, I don't think, overpress it. And I have found that I end up picking up the two of them together and pulling the block off the print. Let me put this down for a moment. So not too bad. It's wet, so there'll be a little glare on it. But very solid. Most of the detail is there. I might have over-inked it a little bit. So that's the one method where the block is put down facing up and the paper is put on top. And the other method is to put the paper down, and you have to kind of guess at where the paper is going to sit there. And if I were doing, say, a note card, and I wanted this to be a vertical note card, I would actually put this like this, and you have to think of the fold and the way you're going to fold it. Because it folds to the left, you actually push the paper back because you want a vertical going this way on the front of a card. So let me re-ink this. So that's placing the paper there, and you can just fiddle with it and see, do a few test runs. I just have to see how this is. I don't want her too crooked on there. So that's how I will set this up to do a vertical front note card. I'm going to pull it out of there, pull it off of there, and that was probably my fault. I did not put a lot of pressure on it, so it didn't come out complete. And that was my fault. I didn't put the pressure on it. But you can see how that would be a vertical note card, and then you fold it in half with this left half going toward the back. And then you have a note card. Let me put the camera down and we'll do that again. Now, I paid $55 for this press on eBay. It was $79 at Dick Blick, and I was going to buy it from Dick Blick because I generally get my kind of the bigger supplies or the bigger equipment things from Blick. But then I saw it on eBay for $55, so you can look around and get probably a better price than all the retailers. So now, because that may not have had completely even pressure when I pulled it down, now that I have it placed on the card, I can pull that a little bit forward and maybe get a little bit more even pressure. And that does come out better. But you can see that I'm doing this quickly because I'm doing it as an example, so I'm not really paying attention to my inking, and I have a little bit too much ink over on the side. But there's the idea of a folded note card. It does take some practice, and depending on the inks that you're using, all of these are done on washable, with washable ink, just the block printing ink, or this is the Speedball block printing ink that comes with the original Speedball set. So it's nice for printing your own stationery. I do have some blank note cards I bought, but I haven't decided yet what to print on them. So that's doing a note card, and these other examples are with the other method of putting the block down facing up and the paper on top. So those are the two ways that you can use this, and that is the Speedball Press. I want to point something out about the two different methods of using the press. This is the dog print I showed you a minute ago, and I'm not sure if it'll show up on the camera, but there are actually indentations in the paper with, at the time the block was a 4-inch block, and so wherever the edge of the block was, left an indentation. Now this is very light copy paper, so that would happen, but that happened with the paper down and the block on top. I have since trimmed that block, and this is linoleum that is unmounted. And what I thought, excuse me, that I would do while I'm doing this is show you, both of the blocks I used there were unmounted linoleum. Let me show you how it works with a different kind of block. That indentation, depending on the paper that you're using, is going to show up if you put the paper down first and the block on top. Now this is a soft rubber block of a bird. This is, I think it's called Speedy Cut. It's by Speedball. So there's an inked bird. Now, I'll put it in the middle and then use the press. I want to make sure that's in the view. Now this, you can see, it shouldn't leave an impression on the edges. But the other linoleum block had done that. Linoleum tends to curl if you don't trim all the excess away from it. But this is rubber and I haven't trimmed it. Little, if no, indentation, and only one spot where the edge threw some ink down. And actually a very good print. It shows the detail between the feathers, it shows the feathers on the tail, and that's a very basic block anyway. That is the only detail, are the feathers and on the tail, and both of those show up. So that's with the paper being down, and I'm turning it in the light, so a rubber block does not leave indentations the same way linoleum does. Now let's try another one. The wood blocks tend to take more ink because the ink soaks right into the wood. But they're also much thicker. So the amount of pressure you apply is going to be slightly different. But the other advantage is they're not flexible. Now, I'll do it the same way. I'll put the paper down first, but I'm pretty sure the edges of this block are going to leave an impression. And that wood is about 1.5 inches thick. And you can see it right there, how the paper is buckling down. And that's actually, sometimes wood warps a little bit. Still a good print. And because, well, no, there is a line right across here. Right across the top, there is a line. So you have to be aware of the type of material you're using if you put the paper down first and the block on top. And that may be why that instructor in the reviews of this suggested that students put the paper on top instead of on the bottom. Because the reason you get that line is when the block is on the bottom, it's sinking down into the memory foam. No, other way around. When the paper's on the bottom, the block pushes down into the memory foam. Doing it this way, with the block facing up, and the paper on top, what is going to go down into the memory foam is the bottom of the block, and that's not really going to matter. There are two adjustments, two holes that you can move that plate to for the amount of pressure or pressure changes. Now that one, again, did not print fully. So let's do it again. Like I said, wood takes more ink. And I have to pay a little bit more attention than I have been. And we'll do it again. Now this block is about 5 by 3 and 1.5 inches thick. Nope. I either have to get more ink, or this may be, if the block is uneven, which this one could be. I've been using this one for hand pressing, you know, doing it by hand. I haven't used this one in this press yet. So if you are using wood and your block is uneven, if you don't compensate for that by more or less adding extra ink in your low point, then you'll get a block that only prints half of the block. Now, this plate is hitting that block evenly. I'm a little leery of putting an awful lot of pressure down because I don't want to permanently dent my memory foam. Nope, see, that's the block. So this is a way for me to know. I didn't realize that block was uneven because I've been using it as a hand block. And the tail end is higher than the other one. So in order for that to print like that and use it in the press, I have to level out the block, either by removing something off the back, or it'll be easier just to take a carpenter's wood plane and go in this direction and take a couple of layers off the back here. and then put the detail back in if I need to. So there are a few prints and different materials of blocks: rubber, linoleum, and wood, with the Speedball Press.